Hi, so let's try and solve this. It says total amount of points, and it's saying our football team has finished the championship. Our team's match results are recorded in a collection of strings. Each match is represented by a string in the format, and we can see x colon y, where x is our team's score and y is our opponent's score. For example, what we have here, it said points are awarded for each match as follows. So if x, in this case 3, is greater than y, like 1, then 3 points for the person or for the team, our team. If x is less than y, then 0 points, that's a loss. And if x is the same as y, 1 point, that's a tie. So we need to write a function that takes this collection and returns the number of points our team X got in the championship by the rows given above. So he said, note our team always plays 10 matches in the championship, and the boundaries is 0 and 4 for both X and Y. So let's solve that first in JavaScript. And what we've been given here is a function called point, and the games, which is the array of the different scores for each of the matches played. So to solve this, first of all, I'm going to create, I'll call it total. So this is going to have like the total scores for the X, that's our team X. And then I'm going to, maybe I'll just do a for loop, and I'll say let me call it score of, I'll use of games. So what this is going to do is going to go into the array games, and it will pick each of the scores this way, the strings of scores. So it's going to pick each of them, and it's going to go that way. So it will call that score as a variable. Then within it, I'm going to see how I can extract this first element, this first number in the string. So I'm going to say, let me just create a variable x as for that first one, and it's going to be the score, and is index of 0. So it's the first item in this string, which is 3. And then I'm going to also create that for the opponent, and do the same thing, score, and this time I want the index of 2, because that will be the column is 1 and this is 2. So I'll also need to remember to convert this to integers, that's a 3 and 1, because extracting it from a string should come out also as a string. So to do that, I will just use the parseInt method and function, and that should do the job. ParseInt. Alright, so what we've done is we've created the loop to fetch each of these scores from the game array. So it's going to fetch them, and we further extracted the first item, which in this case is 3, and stored it in a variable x, and the second item, which is in this case 1, to store it in the variable y. So x represents our score and y represents the opponent's score for each of the games. So we're going to have x and y given. So if x is greater than y, then 3 will be added to total. If x is less than y, then nothing will be added, 0 will be added. Then x is same as y, then 1 point will be added to total. So let's see how we can do that. I can just simply use let me just say num. Let me fetch the num now. This num represents whether 3, 0 or 1 will be selected. So I need to specify the condition here, and I can use a ternary operator. So I will just say when x is greater than y, then what do we want to pass into num? We'll pass 3, else when x is same as y, so equivalent to y, what do we want to pass in? We'll pass 1, because that's what we're told, else 0. So that should be passed into num, and then afterwards we should now add that num value to the total. So we'll just say total plus equals, that means total is equals to total plus num, so plus equals num, something like that. And at the end of the day, what we should return is the total, because it shouldn't I guess it won't be 0 again, so we'll just pass that in. So I think this should pass this test, this challenge. So let's see. So we've passed the test. Let's attempt, and we were able to solve that. Let me see if there is a way we can refactor this, and probably I'm going to use the function called, or the method called reduce. So the reduce method, and basically let me just use this, my JavaScript file, to explain what the reduce method is. So I'm going to assume, let me go back to instruction, that I have this array. So I'm going to take that, and I'm just saying const r is equals to that, right? So let me just have that now. So we have this array, and let me just specify another array so that will be a bit clearer. So I'll just say array2, and maybe I'll just give this numbers, normal numbers, like that, 2 and 1 and maybe just 10, something like that, 10 and maybe 5. So I think this is better. Let me just take this one off, and this will be easier to understand. So array is equals to that. So the reduce method in JavaScript basically helps to find a total of several values within the array. So in this case, I can find out what the sum of all these values will be when added to a total or to another value. I can find out exactly what the sum total should be, and I can also find out what the subtraction would be if I subtract all these values from a total sum. So let me just show you that. So I'm going to have here something called total, like this, right? And total is going to be the array dot reduce. So this is how we write it. Then when you reduce, you need to have a function inside. So this time I want to have an anonymous function, and I'm going to have two values, two arguments in there. One, I will call it total, and the second one I will just call it num, that way. So this statement inside will now determine what function I want to carry out. So I'll say total, for example, plus num, and the second value I'm passing after this function here is going to actually be the total itself, or let me say it's going to be the starting value for the function we want to carry out. So in this case, it means if the starting value is 0, then and I put a plus, so total plus num. So it's going to go through each of these as num, and for example, it will go through 10, and it will add it to the total 0 to get 10. Then it will go 5 again, it will add 5 to the total, which is 10. It will now be 15. It's going to 3, add 3 to the 15, which will be 18. It will go again to 2, add 2 to the 18, which will be 20, and the last one 1. It will add 1 to 20. So what we should have here is 21. So let me put on Coca just to confirm that. Okay, we need to log out the value. So I'm just going to say console.log and total, and guess what, we have 21. So that's how reduce works. If you want to subtract, for example, all these values from the total, let me give the total as 30, then I'm going to change this as minus, and here we have 9, because if you remove 10, you're left with 20, and then this other one should give you 9, because all these sum up to 11. So basically that's how you use reduce, and that's what we're going to use right here. First of all, we're going to, let me just highlight this out, then we're going to return. Now remember, it's the method, so the games, which is the array itself, reduce that way. Then inside there we'll now have the anonymous function, remember. Then maybe this will be specified by x and y, then we can say for now x plus y. Then remember, we will now have the starting value, which is, in this case, total is 0. So let's just make this total. Total, I'll just make that total, and this num, just as I did in the example. So I'm going to say total and num. So total starting at 0, like we have here. Then num, which will go through each of the arrays, each of these ones. That's what it means. So once we've done that, remember that we still have to go through each of these values to pick out these ones here. So to do that, I'll need to explain that inside the function. So I'm not sure it's a good idea for me to just include just this. So instead I'm going to use the curly brackets to enlarge that function here. So this will come in here. I'll cut that in and here. So now we will now specify what we want to return. So I would have said return, in this case, total plus num, like this. Yeah, but we need to define all this like we did before. So I'm going to take that x this way, pass int, and this time we put that as a score. So I'm going to, or let me just make that score. That's true. So instead of num, we'll get the score, each of these as a score. Then it's taking the first value, which is like 3, and passing it into x. Then it will do the same for y here. And afterwards, we would now have to specify the value for num, which will be added to the total this way, I think. Yeah, so I'll just take all that and put that in here. So we have now decided on that one. Then the return would now be on total plus num. We want to return this first to this function. Remember, we're running the reduce function, so it's going to return the value. Like if you see here, we're getting total minus num, or let me just use positive plus num. So it's going to take this as to continue the process. So assuming we had 0 here, so it sees the 0 and then it adds 10 to 0, right, to make it 10, right? So that 10 is going to now be used to continue the process. So 5, so it means 10 will now be the total, then 5 will be added and continuously that way. So that's the same thing we're doing here. So we're just saying initially total was 0, so we're adding this the next value, either is 3, 1 or 0, to the total to continue the process. And eventually, once that is completed, it will now give out return, like it's doing here, saying here, return the value of the total. So let's run test and see if this will pass. And it passed an attempt, and that worked. So we've been able to solve it that way. So let's see if we can as well shorten this better. Maybe we'll make it easier. We are initially adding a num to the total, so we're doing it direct. So we'll take all this one like this, oops, sorry, and put that there, and it's now going to add each of these to that to the total. So I'll just remove that. So it's just to get rid of the num and just to find a way to directly pass it into the total. That's all this ones. So this is similar to what we did before. The only difference is now we're adding it directly to total, and for each of the process it's going to select the value and add it to the process, to the total, before it concludes the reduce method, and then it will now pass it on to as the result for the function. So let's run again to test and attempt, and now we can see it works. So we've concluded that for JavaScript. Let's go to Python and see how to solve that. So Python, we're going to do the same thing based on the instructions we had. So we'll first of all pass in the value, the total value, and then we'll do a for loop. So we'll just say for let's call it x in games, this way. So it's going to loop through all the values in the array games, and for each of them we want to specify our condition. So say if x, then the item in the first index is less than, or is greater than actually, then we'll put x as 2. So it's saying if 3 is greater than 1 in this case, then what's going to do, we're going to add to the total like this, total plus equals 3. Else, so elif, that's else if, then we'll do the other condition, 0. Then if that is the same or similar, that is equivalent actually to that, then total will be plus equal 1. Then we just have else. So else should be the case where we end up with 0 points. That means x is less than y. So we can just pass that so that it doesn't do anything. Then we'll return the value of the total. So let's test, and now it passes on that set and attempt. Okay, so that now passes. So let me see if I can use a better way, like list comprehension in Python, to solve this and make it more concise. So list comprehension basically is trying to create a new array sort of from an existing array, and then let me say list now because this is Python, and we want to specify conditions which will determine what goes into the new array. So in this case, I'm just going to say by returning, so we want to return the new array, but within the array we want to sum that array. So I'll put the sum, and I'll now put the array, and we're going to now put the conditions. So we'll say 3 if, so we can use the if else conditions in Python to determine like an iteration. So it's like the ternary operator. It will now determine what will be selected. So if, then we'll now say x, which is this, each of this value, then we'll take 0, that's the first index, is greater than x2. So if this is true, then it will return 3, else we'll say return 1 if, then we'll do the same thing, x in index 0 is equivalent to x in index 2. Then we'll say else 0, then 4 x in games. So what we've done here is that we are looping through games using x. So we're going to say x represents each of these, and then we are passing the condition to decide what will be selected. So it says select 3 if this first value is greater than this, else select 1 if this first value and this one is the same, else select 0. And this would now create the new array, which would be the series of numbers within the array. Then sum will now sum that all up to give us the total sum for x, so the total points that x has. So let's run this and see that it passes, and that pass attempt, and that's passed. So basically that is how to solve this challenge, and if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you for viewing. Bye.